Today I'm joined by Kiwi. Survey couldn't make it, unfortunately.
Yes.
And this one is a doozy of a video, so let's just get right into it.
Things are falling.
You okay, Kiwi?
I accidentally slapped the food that I was eating and almost it went everywhere almost.
And the SCP we're going to be looking at today is SCP-1762.
Yes, I love 1762. It's my favorite.
Neutralized. Previously
I am
safe.
once again the only one who knows nothing about SCP.
Special containment procedures.
So you've introduced me to SCP and I just went down the rabbit
is
hole.
held in a standard containment unit at site. During the periods when SCP-1762-1 releases SCP-1762-2, video logs are to be recorded for future research. Although instances of SCP-1762-2
You know what neutralized means, right?
they should not be allowed
rice?
to exit their containment.
Rice, yes. Not
Description.
specifically, but I get the general idea.
SCP-1762-1 is a plain cardboard box
Because some
that is
people
32
get
by
confused
20
by the
26
classifications,
centimeters.
the object class stuff.
It is spray
I
painted
just wanted
silver
to
on the
ask.
interior and exterior.
This is the first time we've seen an SCP that was neutralized,
written
I believe.
in black permanent marker on the lid of the container. Opening the lid of SCP-1762-1
ran into this SCP when we played SCP Unity.
reveals it to be empty.
Yeah, how was it in SCP Unity?
SCP-1762-1 will infrequently open and
It was
initiate a release of
Kinda
SCP-1762-2.
cool, I guess. I didn't really know anything about it.
During this time, the box will briefly emit a large
did
amount
the
of
dragons
black
come out
smoke
of the
that
box
quickly
or like
dissipates.
Yeah,
anything of that
we
sort?
let the dragons
Ah,
out.
okay.
20
It's kind of
seconds
cool.
for SCP-1762-2 to emerge after the smoke clears. SCP-1762-2 is the collective term applied to the beings that emerge from SCP-1762-1. All instances of SCP-1762-2 bear resemblance to various types of dragons in both Eastern and Western depictions, albeit in similar forms to that of origami models. Analysis of SCP-1762-2 reveals that they are composed of kami paper.
I'm quiet
After
because I don't want to say
exiting
anything that would kind of like spoil you about SCP. So I'm kind of scared.
Will fly
But
together
yeah.
in large groups and
Yeah, I'm
interact
trying to just soak
playfully
up all the
with any
information
nearby
here.
personnel
Yeah.
I heard
and
that this
each
was a
other.
really sad story, but I don't know
Yeah.
why or how it can be.
vary in length from
I just
9
like
to
how
30
creative it is
centimeters and are capable
in
of
the way that it
sustained
tells
flight
the story
once they
through
exit
the SCP file.
SCP-1762-1 and
You'll
have
see
been
what I mean.
recorded attaining speeds of 15 kilometers per hour. The number of SCP-1762-2 varies with each opening of SCP-1762-1, with numbers ranging from 50 to over 400. After approximately 2 to 3 hours of time spent outside of SCP-1762-1, all instances of SCP-1762-2 return and fly back into SCP-1762-1. During this time, SCP-1762-1 will once again begin emitting smoke, and instances of SCP-1762-2 will vanish after passing the rim of SCP-1762-1. SCP-1762-1 closes once all SCP-1762-2 have returned to it. The next date of release is inconsistent. A message, written or carved into a varying material, will sometimes materialize on top of SCP-1762-1's lid once the box retrieves all instances of SCP-1762-2. Attempts to send a message or recording device back with SCP-1762-2 have provided negative results. These documents and their appropriate dates of appearance are being compiled and recorded.
I mean, where do they go? Is it just in the box?
1762
Is it in a portal to somewhere?
on 2000.
Isekai.
SCP-1762-1 began to undergo a series of events that lasted 11 months and 28 days. These events, as well as prior incidents that led up to the beginning of the scenario, have now been classified under the title the Jabberwocky event.
Walkie.
Addendum 1762
You okay, Kiwi?
Documentation of
Yes.
the Jabberwocky
I'm just in a really giggly mood because we're watching
Document
Dragon.
1762-1. Date obtained, 2004. This is the first recorded instance of SCP-1762-1 opening while contained inside. You have found us. Thank you. It has been so long since we last saw each other.
Oh, I'm tearing up. Oh no.
The peace has been upheld. The giants and behemoths have kept
Nothing's
their
even
word
happened yet.
and have not caused any trouble since you last came and gave the order. We missed your company. How has your family been? Do you still know how to work your room? You are welcome to visit any time. Document 1762 for
What is that supposed to mean?
obtained.
What?
2004. It's strange to see how much your world has changed. It is even stranger to see how we appear in this place. In fantasy, we are much bigger. Or maybe you have grown taller. Fantasy is still the same. We hope you can visit us like you used to. Though our room is as grand as ever, it appears yours has shrunken? We do not understand. The rooms were supposed to be maintained, as was our agreement. Please restore the belief. Document 1762-6. Date obtained, 2005. Only 20 instances of SCP-1762-2 appeared during this event. Said instances did not lift off, and instead walked slowly on foot for the whole period they were out of SCP-1762-1. Friends, we apologize for our few numbers. We have had to remain in fantasy for quite some time. The others are growing
In fantasy? Is that
We are trying to keep
where they come
peace.
from? Is that what they used to refer to
For
it
all
as?
of our happiness,
I mean, they're referring to it as fantasy, their world.
we know you are trying.
Yeah.
Your family is the most imaginative of us all. Document
Repair the room quickly.
1762-14. Date obtained, 2000. Along with 10 instances of SCP-1762-2 appearing, 3 balls of yellow, crumpled construction paper were expelled from SCP-1762-1. These pieces were observed to shake violently for 5 seconds, then ceased all further movement. They were picked up by SCP-1762-2 and returned to SCP-1762-1. The giants were foolish. Your room was not ready to accept them yet. We're sorry, friends. We hope that we can still see you, but time is growing short for our happiness. Document 1762-15,
Oh,
I'm assuming those are like
Date
dead
obtained.
dragons?
2000.
yes, that's what I assume as well.
5 instances of SCP-1762-2 emerged, carrying said document. They immediately returned to SCP-1762-1 after depositing it on the floor. Tensions are rising. Fantasy is becoming darker.
I mean, I do like dark
Servants
fantasy.
and the hybrids are furiously trying to
Me
hold
too,
them
I also
back,
like dark
but the
fantasy.
giants and elves wish to strike and make an entrance. They say that your family has grown stupid and ignorant. We hope this untrue. It would sadden us all greatly to know that you have forgot. Document 1762-16. Date obtained, 2000. A single red instance of SCP-1762-2 emerged from SCP-1762-1. Its wings were torn and it was noticeably crumpled. It collapsed onto the floor 1 minute later and did not move again. Upon its expiration, the body of SCP-1762-2 rapidly unfolded and revealed a message written on the white side of the paper. War. Goodbye, friends. 2 hours later, SCP-1762-1 opened and emitted flames that reached 2 meters in height
Whoa.
and temperatures of over 1,700 degrees Celsius. Sounds of distant roaring were heard from within SCP-1762-1. At 2000 hours, a large amount of torn paper pieces and paper balls were ejected from SCP-1762-1. Several damaged SCP-1762-2 were also expelled and were deemed deceased upon examination.
Oh.
SCP-1762-1 continued to sporadically open and close for the next 6 weeks. During this time, it continued to emit fire as the amount of paper discharged from it steadily decreased. Matter resembling muscle and tissue was continuously expelled from SCP-1762-1 at increasing frequency. SCP-1762-1 remained closed and inactive for the next 7 months.
Okay, now before we continue, my image that I have in my head right now is kind of like when they use the term family, they're kind of referring to our race essentially, like humans, as you would like a family, as in the dragons, the elves, the giants, or whatnot. This also kind of seems like a child's like, what would you call it? Box of toys. That's kind of the image that it's giving, and then inside the box of toys is like an imaginary world that's called fantasy, where these dragons are actually like giant dragons that you would look at as dragons, but when they come out through the box, they turn into these little origami dragons. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, the way that I've always understood it as is like when I was little, my parents didn't have enough money to buy us toys, so we would always make ourselves toys from paper.
Yeah.
We would always put them in a little box and then play with them. That's how I always took the dragons, as like a little person, like not a boy nor a girl, I don't know their gender, but they probably made these dragons to play with them, and the more they played with them, the more life they got, and that's why it's so depressing, because probably the person in question died or something of that kind and then lost the belief, so that's why this is happening.
We'll have to see. Maybe there's more information.
Maybe.
Document 1762-17. Date obtained 2000. This document was discovered lying inside the interior of SCP-1762-1. It was written on parchment, and many of the words had been blurred or stained with blood. Are you still out there, friends? We miss you dearly. Fantasy is no longer safe. Our haven, your beautiful creation, is gone. The giants are dead. The centaurs are dead. The birds have fled. We are going to bury your room. We cannot risk hurting you. This is our goodbye. Maybe one day, your family can build another room. This may be a hollow hope, but we will cherish.
So yeah, essentially like closing the portal to
1 hour later,
this world.
SCP-1762-1
The
began to
little
shake
box is
and
the
emit
room,
smoke
so they've been
for 15
asking
minutes, after
for
which
them
it
to
began
restore the
sag
box.
and collapse. Several portions of the box began to char and tear, creating small burn holes throughout. The words, "Here be dragons," on the lid of the box were burned away. Document 1762-18. Date obtained 2000.
Aww.
This is the final message obtained from SCP-1762-1. It was written in ink on a papyrus scroll, and also depicted a scene of a painted mountainous landscape filled with large trees and waterfalls. A single-winged dragon can be seen in the background. It appears to be flying away. The message is written in black ink in the bottom right-hand corner. Master says that we won't see you again. We are sad. So are the remaining others. We once filled each other's heads with dreams and goals. It's so sad that we cannot share them any longer. Master says we have to go. He says that he will make us a new fantasy. He says you cannot be part of it. We are sad. We love you. We will not forget you. We are scared. Will you forget us? Upon removal of document 1762-18, salt water began to leak from SCP-1762-1, and the burn marks that covered the container began to disappear. 3 minutes later, SCP-1762-1 had been restored to its original state. The words, "Here be dragons," were replaced with the words, "Here were dragons."
No.
The Jabberwocky event is declared
I mean,
concluded.
it's so
with the
sad.
suburbs.
I don't even know these dragons.
Since the end of the Jabberwocky event, SCP-1762-1 has shown no further anomalous properties and has been declared neutralized. SCP-1762-1 and 3 deceased instances of SCP-1762-2 now reside in researcher Yoshihiro Takanaka's office.
Okay, so
for commemorative
I'm guessing
purposes.
neutralizes it's no longer considered an SCP.
Addendum. 1762
Or like
Were-
active, right?
Like,
Update December
yeah,
31st.
they are no longer active or were
2015.
accidentally or like
After nearly 8 years of inactivity,
intentionally destroyed.
researcher Takanaka
Mm,
reported
in some way, shape, or form.
SCP-1762-1 began emitting purple smoke and spontaneously opened at 2300 hours, falling to the floor. It dislodged a single chunk of crystal, later identified as amethyst, and a large leather-bound book. The contents of this book appear to detail various specimens that once lived within the world of SCP-1762-2, though from what the author has written, all organisms mentioned are likely extinct. This book is now classified as SCP-1762-BOL-1. The amethyst crystal had the following words carved into it. "One last time." After falling, SCP-1762-1 continuously emitted smoke for the next 40 minutes, before ceasing all activity. Upon trying
Potentially,
to take
you
up
could like create another fantasy
SCP-1762-1,
using that crystal, I'm
Takanaka
guessing?
reported that the
Which
box
is what they're
proceeded to
insinuating with one last
disintegrate
time.
upon touching it. Its remains are
Maybe.
now kept in a containment capsule.
I
in his
took it
office.
as like they used the crystal in the book to create the world.
turns
So
out,
maybe you can
I actually
create
have the
another
book
one
right here.
with the crystal.
I'm guessing you all want to know what's inside it. Now, this book is classified as SCP-1762-BOL-1. Well, BOL is an acronym for Beasts of the Old Letters. Let's explore it.
Yeah,
Shall
the
we?
rest of the video will be him discussing the beasts.
Okay.
You hold
That's
in
why
your
it's an hour and
hands the
30 minutes
paper
long.
keys, the
Yes.
keys that can unlock fantasy. When I first discovered this wondrous land, I could scarcely believe everything before me. The spiraling and floating mountains that reached so high that the rings of clouds were still below them. The great waterfalls that sprayed down from the ancient rivers that flowed through forests with trees wise and full of
Yes.
knowledge. The
So
oceans with their
beautiful.
golden beaches and cool lapping waves that never roared nor stormed.
Dragons make me feel so
And the life
sad that
within.
SCP
Such
Foundation
unique
just
and wonderful
keeps them,
creatures that walk
doesn't
through
try
this
to actually help
fantastic
them.
world.
Because this could have been
took years for
prevented,
me to
and that's
gaze
why I'm
upon
so
them all.
sad.
Who knows? I may have had more to see. I can't see them anymore, though. The land is now barren and cold. So
Aw.
empty and sad that even the icy ridge that lines the northern forests would offer more warmth. Everything has vanished. All the wonder, gone. All the vibrant and amazing things this world once had to offer, disappeared. I still wonder where they went. I doubt I will ever know. All I do know is that I have my books, my stories, and the memories that are already beginning to fade away as I grow aged and alone in an old man's mind that still believes a long-last fantasy may return. I don't think I'll live to see them come back, but I leave these stories to whomever finds them, so that they can know that they did exist. Beasts of the Old Letters. Aliphox. When dawn shines through the trees of the soft needle forest, you can find the Aliphox humming through the giant lilies for a morning meal. A beautiful two-headed bird, slightly larger than a full-grown man, with downy rainbow feathers that quiver ever
I don't
so
think this is
slightly
your
as they
favorite
run through
beast.
the warm morning breeze.
No.
The Aliphox has 4 wings.
Look how
that are
long of a
more
beak
akin
it
to an
has.
insect's than a bird's.
Kind
But
of
they
like
blend
a
seamlessly with the back of the creature.
crane.
They are jeweled and delicate, and they
You
catch
know,
the
like
early
those
rays
little
in such a way
bugs.
that they glint.
I don't
and
know if you can
shimmer.
even call them bugs or birds.
The
Like they
Aliphox's
exist in real
heads
life where they
each
just
sport a
fly really
single large
quickly
crest,
from one flower
which
to the
changes
other.
color from one bird to the
I'm pretty
next.
sure it's
Their
that
eyes
kind
are
of
round
beast.
and a deep purple.
Are you referring
Their
to a
beaks
hummingbird?
gold and slender,
I don't
and
know.
their cries.
I don't think
The
it's a
cry of an
hummingbird.
Aliphox
I just
is
know that they
sublime.
sound like a bug,
Smooth, crisp,
and they can't
echoing
stop
warble.
unless they will
The
die.
heads take turns as they call out. One rising, one falling, one rising, one falling. Aliphox eggs are pure white until the chick comes close to hatching, during which they will turn vibrant shades of pink, green, blue, and gold. The chick is no larger than a hen,
Big
and
colors.
like any other infant bird, naked and blind for a few weeks. The first coat of down is white as well, but as it grows older, colors will show through, layer upon layer, until a full array of hues coats the bird. I
Yeah.
had the great privilege of seeing
It's
an
a shame that
Aliphox
it's a
nest
bird.
myself, after many years of exploring the soft needle forest.
For those of you who don't know,
Before,
Kiwi has
I
an
had to
irrational
rely
fear
on
of
the records
birds.
and drawings from
It's
the
not
dragons.
irrational, it's
They are
rational.
built on the ground, nearly as wide as a dinner table.
It's just my
Interlaced
fear
with the
levels are
branches of
really
the thorny
high.
ivy to keep predators away from the chicks. The interior is matted with tufts from down the berry bushes. Indeed, the berries themselves are brought back to feed the young too. Of course,
can't
I can only
believe,
marvel a few
wait, this
precious
is part of
minutes
the
before the
SCP,
parents
right?
returned, and proceeded
Hmm.
to fiercely
I
chase me
can't
away
believe
for a
somebody
good
took
quarter
the
of a
time to
mile
write
before
out
they
all of
returned back
this
to their
for this
eggs.
SCP. That's actually pretty
Yeah.
amazing.
Nonetheless,
Or was
I
it
felt
like
a
a
great
group
deal of
project,
happiness,
probably?
knowing
For this
I
one
I don't
SCP?
know.
such a rare
I don't know,
sight
I've never
with
looked
my own
into
eyes.
dragons were there. I'm not as thorough as
Bumpkles.
Serbi is.
An
I just
enigmatic, and dare I say, frightening
watched
creature.
Volgun read
the
it out and I was
Bumpkle is.
amazed at how much
The
work
dragons
was put into
themselves
this
say
one
they do not know
ACP
how or
for
when
Yeah.
completely
the Bumpkles
free,
arrived
and that's
in the
why like
Black
it's
Rock
one of my
forests to the
favorites.
north.
There's so much
But they have lurked
creativity
within
and
those
everything
rugged
put into
trees
this
for
single little
centuries now.
world.
Right?
I dared
That
not
sadly
to
ends
travel
up
into the
dying.
Black
exist
Rock forests
anymore.
alone. That
Yeah,
place
which is
crawls with
even
the animals of the
sadder.
night and is a place of mystery and fear. The good wizard, Garen,
Like this
and the
whole
dragon,
world
Darwin,
somebody
accompanied
probably
me all
created
the
in
way.
their head.
I am
In
forever
the
grateful
SCP
for their
universe itself
willingness
ended up
and
dying
courage.
because nobody wanted to.
As the Black
Nobody
Rock forest loomed
understood
nearer,
what
I
they were
began to
talking
remember
about or tried
tales
to
of
understand,
Bumpkle encounters.
which makes me even
Some
more
poor,
sad.
brave soul who went exploring alone when the Ashen Trail was not yet made. What dreadful and terrifying experiences they must have been. Half a mile into the trees, and the sunlight was already almost completely blocked out. We relied on the soft glow of the carpet moss and ringed mushrooms. The mosquitoes were vicious to the wizard and I. Another 15 minutes of walking, and we saw our first Bumpkle. Or to put it more accurately, Bumpkles. 5 of them, all hunched over as they crooned over a carcass. From the dim glow of plant life, I could see
That's
the
not
muzzle
funny,
of what may have been a
but-
wattle grunt. All of us halted, afraid to disturb the creatures.
I'm just imagining a bunch
Easily
of little
30, even 40 feet tall.
flower-sized creatures
A single
on a
clawed
bird
bird-like
leg just
foot and leg
munching on
that
that
rose
animal.
all the
And I
way
don't know why that's
without
funny
any
to
other
me.
limb or torso.
Kiwi, they're
until it
30 to
connected
40
with the
feet
head.
tall.
A giant
30
round
oh,
thing
oh, wait.
covered in thick matted down.
Never mind, they're
Even though
not
the name
small.
suggests that they're
Eyes
small, but
that
no.
shone like moons, casting light onto the dead
They're not
wattle
small,
grunt
okay,
and
never
illuminating
mind.
the dead creature more than I would care to see. They say the eyes of a Bumpkle hypnotize and put the unfortunate gazer into a state of shock and terror. Had we not immediately frozen, they may have turned to us as well. A Bumpkle has 2 mouths, one giant seam hidden beneath its hairy head, filled with thin needle-like teeth. The other is underneath its foot, the toes acting as teeth that clamp and fasten onto flesh as the inner ring of jaws greedily bites off bits of flesh. The sound that the Bumpkles were making was atrocious. We stood there silently for the next half hour. By the time the Bumpkles began retreating back into the dark, the wattle grunt was unrecognizable, a pile of cracked bones and entrails. The dropper flies began falling from
You're
the branches of the trees
scary.
above to pick at the few remains. We followed the ashen trail back into the clear where a flood of relief greeted us. I would not return to the Black Rock Forest again for years.
I wouldn't either, man.
Charm changers.
That doesn't sound
Trauma.
More
Instant
akin
trauma.
to a spirit than an animal, charm changers nonetheless have a special place in the fantastic lands, and so I have included them in this book. With their intense curiosity and near limitless variety, charm changers can be found in any place so long as magic exists there. In their base form, they resemble
So if your
wisps of
glasses
pink,
disappear, you
yellow,
was a
and orange
charm
light,
changer.
sometimes looking like a human child, sometimes no more than an amorphous blob with 2 round eyes. They are very pure beings, and have an intense attraction towards materials used in spellcasting, with a particular regard for books and scrolls. As such, charm changers have been revered as guardians of magic shops, libraries, and rune spots alike. Visitors and creators of such places would be wise to leave a small offering of some sort to the charm changers, usually consisting of a story, a carving, or a runestone. Charm changers will take such offerings and turn them into a vessel for themselves, thereby adding the offering's magical power to its own, and providing itself better protection
so
for an
wholesome.
otherwise delicate body. Those who keep charm changers happy are blessed with prosperity. Once appeased, charm changers are more than happy to assist those who visit or work in the place they inhabit. However, charm changers can be corrupted with offerings of dark subject matter, as well as being forgotten or neglected. Charm changers that suffer such treatment will become cursed changers, and
Dark
turn
subject
otherwise
matter is
benevolent
just
places
Huey's
into
Yowie.
areas of ill fortune and disease.
No.
Cursed changers are black, green, and silver, as opposed to their lighter counterparts, and once transformed, are impossible to change back. The most tragic incident of charm changers turned cursed occurred at the Library of Naught, where an offering of contaminated elixirs turned nearly 200 charm changers into maddened spirits that began to leak poison into the streets.
Oh no.
The dragons were forced to burn down the entire
Oh, they burned down the
library,
entire library. Oh
incinerating
god.
the charm changers, along with hundreds of scripts and books.
Oh no, the history of the
Drop-off
place.
dwellers. At the edges of the coral flats and bountiful cliffs, where the seaside takes a plunge into cooler waters, pods
a
of
whale.
drop-off dwellers float and bob lazily in a
Look,
peaceful
it's a
slumber.
gacha player.
They are shaped like a teardrop that grew immensely swollen on one side, with a small pointed tail that does little in terms of moving its enormous body. Dwellers rely more on the current to move than themselves, going for months at a time without food until drifting back to the fantastic lands.
That's
Easily up to 80
one
feet
hell of a
long,
life.
there are 2 distinct
Yes.
species of dwellers. The
They're like,
dwellers
"Go
of the
with the
coral
flow,
flats possess
dude."
distinct growths on
They
their
go with
heads,
the
which
flow
are
and go
actually
without food, and
coral
Hajime went
colonies
without food
that
for
have
like 3
fallen
days and almost
become
died.
fixed during feeding
Damn.
times. Coral
difference.
dwellers are a light blue color, with lighter rings dotting their backs. Cliff dwellers are a muddled brown, with much more numerous blue spots. Their tails end in a clump of streamer-like skin flaps that ripple and twirl as the dweller moves slowly through the waters. Dwellers come to the
They're
fantastic lands
basically
once a year.
whale
Corals during the
turtles.
spring and cliffs in the fall. At the coral
Yeah, pretty
flats,
much.
dozens of dwellers line side by side at the drop-off's edge, where together
I wanted to
they
say
inhale
water
huge
turtles,
amounts
but
of
turtles are
seawater,
water animals, so
sucking
I
down the
couldn't.
old, dead, and leftover remains
Water
that
They're whale
accumulate over the
turtles.
winter.
Yeah.
When they are done feeding on the debris, the reefs are once again new and ready to begin a new cycle of life. On the bountiful cliffs, dwellers spit out water high into the air at the fruit trees above, freeing hundreds of heavy trees from their burden and into their mouths. Life below also rely on the falling fruit for a final feast before winter comes, when they either must go on a long journey to warm waters or wait it out in hibernation. Regardless of which season, drop-off dwellers play a key
I
role
love how their
in
whole
making
life
sure
is
the
just
coasts of the
RNG.
fantastic lands stay vibrant.
But they're a very integral part of the
The
ecosystem.
Eskleberg Forest.
Yeah.
While not as large or dense as the soft needle or black rock forests, the Eskleberg Forest and its singing groves are a popular destination for commoners and explorers alike. Despite its name, the Eskleberg Forest is not actually a forest, and is instead a single large organism. Each of the trees in the forest is a runner sent up by a large and
the forest
complex root
idea.
system which is impeded in Eskleberg Peak. The trunks
Look
of
at
these
the
runners
SCP
are
IKEA.
hollowed out, and there are openings to the hollow interior on the tops and sides of the trunks. Air will often funnel in through the top opening and blow out through the side openings, creating a variety of tones. The leaves on the branches of these trees grow in a curled, funnel-like shape. The constant production of tones by the runners fills the groves with a flowing improvisational melody, providing a pleasant acoustic background for visitors.
Yes.
This constant stream of sound is then funneled into the forest leaves, into the center of the spirals, where the air once again enters into the inner workings of the runners. Wood nymphs and scholars who have studied the groves believe that this constant passing back and forth of music between the trees is the forest thinking to itself. Among these, there is a small following which believes the forest is only asleep, and that the great wood beast will one day awake and rise out of Eskleberg Peak. The unique hollowed-out trunks of the Eskleberg Forest provide habitats for numerous small animals, including sizable populations of burnt waffle and zootru. The forest is also the only location in which the bulbnut squirrels are found naturally.
Bulbnut.
This vibrant ecosystem makes the forest popular among amateur naturalists and seasoned explorers alike.
It just sounds like a nice place.
Firemanes.
Very
Intensely
relaxing
proud
place to
animals.
just be at.
Firemanes roam the
No,
Yanyiir
this looks like
plains
a
in prides ranging from 10 to
monster
15
and Monster
members.
Hunter.
Closely resembling a lion at base,
Looks like a monster that you would
Firemanes
have
are
as a
also
quest
named
to
for
collect the hide
scarlet,
off.
iridescent hairs
Yeah.
that ring the necks of both the male and female, and race down the sides and backs in horizontal stripes.
You have
This
little
fur is
hands.
highly prized as a material for clothing, though there are very strict laws placed on Firemane hunting. However, unlike the lion, Firemanes possess two pairs of antlers that rise regally from their heads behind the ears like a stag, and race across the savanna on 3 pairs of scaly reptilian legs.
I just imagine them
Firemanes
like
love the
the
thrill
little
of the
lizard
chase
that
while in
stands on
pursuit
2
of
legs and
prey.
runs.
Often purposefully letting the
no.
prey go should they catch it too quickly.
How could you destroy
While
them?
some may say
I don't like
this
that.
game of catch
The
and
image
release
is much more
cruel,
majestic.
it is nonetheless
Yes.
a fascinating spectacle to see as the Firemanes become a flaming blur on the grassy fields. While not hunting, they can be seen racing each other, and if approached with caution and presented with respect, other beings such as wizards, elves, and even dragons. A lucky few have been blessed with the fortune of even riding them. A
Oh,
magician I knew named Jang told me his
Dragon
account of
riding a
riding
Firemane
he
wave.
befriended years ago.
No, I don't
He
think I
said at first he held
I
out for
think they're
dear
referring to
life
more human
as the beast
people.
took off.
I
As he
know, I
gained
just
his
got like
hold,
the
it
mindless
was an
image in my
exhilarating
head.
and unforgettable experience. As he and the Firemane raced through the night sky, they almost looked like a comet flying along the ground. Gyrogliders. A type of newt-like creature native to the beaches and cliffs of the southern sea.
Wow, look at him.
Gyrogliders are unusual for amphibians because they possess
Look at
fully
him.
functional wings, or something close to them at least. These wings resemble long webbed fins that can open and close like a fan when the gyroglider contracts
He's a
and
little
relaxes
flying
its
snake.
muscles. There are 2 pairs stacked directly on top of another.
I think you
with
meant
the
to say a
bottom
little
set
flying
slightly
noodle.
longer.
Yes.
Unlike birds or bats that flap their wings up and down, the gyroglider spins its wings in a circle, the top set turning clockwise and the bottom in reverse. Gyrogliders are thrill seekers, particularly the males. During the mating season in summer, they can be seen taking life-risking leaps off the cliff walls to the beach below, performing a
Adrenaline
multitude of
junkies, a lot of
spins
them.
and flips on the way down to the beach below. The closer they come to the beach before pulling up to safety,
Playing
the more
chicken with
attention
the
they get from
ground.
potential mates. Females can also be seen jumping, though they prefer to glide and loop, as opposed to the male's chaotic, flamboyant routine. When not performing daredevil jumps, they spend most of their time clinging to the beach cliffs, or within the many holes.
I think
and
you can
cracks
guess
of
which
the
ones
rock.
are my favorites just from my reactions.
These creatures come in a stunning array of colors, ranging from turquoise and white to pink and gold to silver and green. It is common for gyrogliders to mate with one that does not possess their own color scheme. This practice continues to produce wide arrays of different shades and color combinations.
Do they just know
Gyrogliders
those
lay
things
their eggs in treacherous
instinctively, or
waters
are they
full
like,
of hidden rocks
yeah, no,
and boulders,
we need more
thereby
color.
discouraging predators from
We
making
need
a
more
meal.
color.
They
Their
all
eggs
just
are round
understand the
and
color wheel.
numerous like a fish's, and coated with an adhesive that
Color
anchors the
theory.
eggs to
The
the
artist
rocks.
flying lizards.
The young hatch within 30 days
Flying
and will
noodles.
spend the first few weeks of their life in the water until their wings develop. Afterwards, they will spin and loop up to the rest of the colony, ready to become the next generation of daredevil jumpers.
Yes.
Hopservoppers.
What,
Yes.
Charming and
Isn't this
oddly
just like
entertaining
a,
species.
what is it, an Ayakashi?
Hopservoppers were created by the Flue Elves about 100
You
years
can
ago,
clearly see
using
that
an array
like
of housework
they were
and
inspired by
cooking
a lot
spells.
of like different cultures,
The
because remember at
Hopservoppers'
the very
goal?
start they said
prepare
that
and serve
dragons, no matter
delicious
of the
food
what culture
wherever and
are
whenever
in the
a
box,
banquet
like all
is held.
types of
Yeah.
dragons.
The Hopservopper
So,
resembles a large
Pretty
white
sure
egg
that the
with a single
a
colored
creator
dot
was
in the
inspired,
center
or
of their
creators,
faces
I'm not
that
sure if multiple
superficially
people
looks
were in the
like a
project,
simple eye.
were inspired by
Usually
like
blue or green when
different
the Hopservopper is not preparing
cultures of like
This dot
fantasy
will change
animals
color
and just
depending on how
fantasy
near a meal
creatures like
the creature is
Ayakashi and stuff.
preparing is to completion. When the
So
circle
could be
turns
that
red
it's
or
an
pink,
Ayakashi.
the food is ready to serve. What makes the
Ayakashi or
Hopservoppers so
yokai,
intriguing
can't remember which
is
one
that
this
they
is.
prepare the food inside their bodies with the help of the
Oh,
magic
I
given
can't
to them
either.
by the Flue
I just
during
like
their
this little
creation.
guy.
When Hopservoppers have
He's
finished
staring
making
into your
food,
soul.
they crack open to reveal the meal inside, which can range from steaming piles of meat and delicious bowls of soups to beautifully arranged fruits and desserts. Once the food is taken, the Hopservopper closes again without any harm and goes back to preparing food as needed until a feast is done.
Okay. It's
Yeah,
basically just like
Move
a,
around on a single
it's a
human-like
walking
foot
fridge
that is the same
and
white
chef.
as their egg body.
Yes.
If in the middle of making a meal, it is not uncommon to hear the Hopservopper present humming a soft, cheery tune as they open and close. It is
Yes.
also not uncommon to hear the sounds of jostling metal coming from inside them as they move to and fro. It almost sounds like Hopservoppers carry a multitude of cooking supplies and utensils inside them.
I always
However,
just imagine like
not
a
even the
little
Flue
tiny
Elves
human
know what goes on
just
inside a
working inside of their mouth.
Hopservopper's Though given the deliciousness of the end product, the Hopservopper's magic is a treat for anyone who is invited to a Flue banquet.
Yes.
Eeyore. As a certified zoologist, it's my job to venture into any and
Eeyore.
all regions in the
I
fantastic
don't
Eeyore,
remember
it's a
this guy.
donkey from
Discover new
Winnie the
species.
Pooh.
One of the more
Oh.
perilous journeys took me to the Kukri Icelands, a flat stretch of snow that is deceptively deep.
This
There
looks
are
like
countless
Bigfoot.
legends of a whole
I don't
world
remember
living
this
below
guy.
the snowfall.
It
Tales
could be
of
that I
things
was
such
doing
as
something else
ice
while I was
elves
watching this and this guy
ancient
popped up and I
monsters
wasn't
that
paying
have been
attention.
hibernating for centuries. Such legends are an enticing incentive for people such as myself to explore, and although travel parties have never discovered the beings spoken of in the fables, we have discovered more than 20 new animal species hidden in the ice. From the shy and plump pluners that huddle in the hundreds to conserve body heat, to the snow lances that lie in waiting to spear unfortunate prey with their icicle-tipped horns. And in all these travels, we relied on the hardiness and warmth of the Eeyore to make sure we wouldn't freeze to death on our journeys.
Eeyore.
The Eeyore are a group of beasts that have been domesticated by the Kukri villagers for decades. Eeyore are incredibly docile, at most grunting
Okay,
softly
now I
when
remember
annoyed,
you.
and perhaps kicking a shower of snow at someone.
They're the
Somehow, I think
puppies.
the sight of seeing someone bewildered as they are covered from head to toe in snow amuses the beasts. If one does such an act, others nearby will rumble together in a chorus that sounds almost like laughter.
They're
Eeyores
mocking
walk
you.
on 4 legs, arranged
Yeah,
like a
they're
cross
little doggy
that are as thick as
hyenas.
tree trunks, with strong flat feet that allow them to walk across the deep snow without sinking. Their heads are small relative to the rest of their bodies and is reminiscent of a turtle. Large folds of fat that are surprisingly warm line the Eeyore's back and store the necessary sustenance for the animal in times when food is scarce. However, the most fascinating parts of the Eeyore
Oh, how did
are
such
the large,
peaceful
multiple
land
fin-like
with
growths
such peaceful
that line the sides
animals
of the fat
turn
bones.
into what it did?
Made of hollow
Oh,
bone
so
at the
sad.
base, these fins are transparent and shine an iridescent white during the short times of sunlight
Or
in
as
the
a
Kukri Islands. In just a few
common
hours of sun,
constant
these growths
throughout
can absorb
any world,
and retain
apparently.
an astounding amount of heat for the cold nights. Whenever we would camp, the Eeyore would spread these growths like a fan. The fins would glow red with the warmth and calm of a comforting fire, and no matter the frigid temperatures around us, with the Eeyore, we would always sleep peacefully.
Oh.
Jorthwacs. Jorthwacs have long been
yeah.
used by the various
Is that a
diminutive
bug?
races of the fantastic lands for transport, racing, and beasts of burden. In at least one of the pixie societies in the Midlands, a pixie's wealth can be determined by the size
beautiful.
and quality of their herd. Even the largest Jorthwac that I have seen was small enough to fit in my hand.
Damn.
The perfect
But these
proportion for most of their masters.
animal designs,
In terms
cryptozoic
of
your
their
heart
head
out.
and body shape, their appearance is similar to a cross between a horse and an antelope. Out of the head
Yeah.
grows a pair of relatively large, curled branching antlers. Each Jorthwac possesses 6 legs, very similar to those of a cricket, which they use for leaping. Jorthwacs come in a variety of vibrant colors, mostly pinkish red and green, but blue and gold varieties also exist, though these are more commonly reserved for knights and royalty. One of the historical
Knights?
accounts including
A knight
Jorthwacs
riding
that I
this?
find most interesting
Yes.
is the Battle of Kur. For several years, a war had been raging, as the Mabbish
Oh.
sprites attempted to drive the
we
invading
go.
Kurish
There's a war.
gnomes out of their territories. The wizard
Poor
clan
little goat.
granted the sprites a boon by increasing their size so that they might fight on equal footing with their gnomish forces. However, during their change, the sprites' Jorthwacs also increased in size. After overrunning the gnomish forces on the field of battle, the sprites were able to use the newfound leaping strength of their Jorthwacs to breach the gnomes' secluded mountain stronghold of Kur, forcing peace and bringing the gnomes under their rule. Kirafr door shards. Approximately 200 years ago, in the Second Dwarven Empire of the North, King Kurthik IV commissioned a massive treasury to be constructed within Mount Kirafr in order to house the
So
kingdom's
these
supply
are
of gold.
beasts.
On
So
the
this is a
southeastern
beast.
face
Yeah.
of the mountain,
It's
an
this
enormous
door
door to
is
the
a beast.
treasury was placed in the cliff face. This door was enchanted to only recognize and allow members of the royal court into the treasury. Unfortunately, King Kurthik and his builder had not anticipated the battering rams and catapults of the northern
Well,
giants.
rip.
While the Kirafr door was shattered, its many fragments retained parts of its enchantment. Each shard took on its own personality and name.
Oh
The
no.
shards are
Make a
capable
whole-
of projecting their thoughts
You
into
can
the
make a
mind
whole
of their
D&D
holder,
campaign
usually
just
in the form
about this
of images,
world.
songs, tales,
Well,
and
actually,
conversation.
yeah.
The shards can also communicate with each other if they are in close enough proximity, and 2 holders which are close enough together can hold a conversation of
I
thoughts
wonder if a D&D
through their
campaign like
shards.
this exists. That would be
Following
really
the
fun.
breaking of the door, the Kirafr shards were collected and dispersed throughout the fantastic lands. In many places, they were cut, polished, and sold as exotic jewelry. In other places, the shards were treasured for their eccentric and curious personalities, and were used by artists as muses of inspiration. I myself carried a Kirafr shard companion named
You're
Hathid
unique
with me
now.
on a
You'll be
necklace
respected.
for several years.
It's kind of like you're just
I'm just
carrying Jim
imagining-
Carrey around with you.
Lightning-struck Titan.
I'm just imagining
It
a
is
car in
immersive
Shard.
to all of the fantastic lands
I
that
want
the
to see your
lightning-struck
manager.
Titan only awakens
I asked him for the
passing
manager
a
as the
Vamroth
Shard.
storm every 300 years in the southern jagged mountains of Kor.
Every
The
300
beast
years.
resembles a beetle.
No,
or
this is the
hermit
final
crab
boss in
with a
Monster
dragon's
Hunter.
head, covered in a Goliath pyramid of stone and dirt that accumulates over its 300-year slumbers. A huge, crumbling,
I'll just laugh at your
spiraling
Monster Hunter
tower
jokes even though I
resides on its
don't get
back,
them because I've
built
never
by the
played
same
Monster
sorcerer
Hunter.
whom the storm
I've
that
never played
awakens
Monster
the
Hunter
beast
either.
is named after.
Damn.
Vamroth came
How
to
dare
the
you make jokes
fantastic
about it,
lands
then?
2,000 years ago.
Hey,
in
I
a
just
search to build
recognize
a
these
place where
monsters
he
as
could
kind of being
practice and
similar.
perfect his art of weather spells. The jagged mountains proved ideal to him, with their isolation and formidable appearance. He began to construct his tower at the plateau of the highest mountain he could find. It would take him 15 years to complete. As soon as the final brick was placed, he began to call forth a thunderstorm more powerful than any the mountains had seen. The lightning surged from the spire of Vamroth's tower to the base and below, each strike stirring the beast he had built his tower upon. With earth-shaking might, the Titan stretched its legs and rose, a 1,000-foot Goliath that bellowed as the storm caused it pain while at the same time restoring it to life. The lightning-struck Titan began to move once more, eating huge chunks of earth and stone from the cliffsides with its toothed maw, and all the while the storm raged above its back, following the Titan as it
This
lumbered
reminds
through
me
the
of that
jagged
one.
mountains. Vamroth himself
I don't know why, but
perished
about
as his
of
tower
that one,
collapsed with each step the giant
Hercules
took.
about Hercules' dad.
The
Wait,
dragons sought at once to try and stop the beast, or at the very least, impede it.
I forgot his name.
But the Titan was impervious to all magic.
What?
It was an ancient,
That will bother me now
long-forgotten
because I
creature,
forgot his name.
a force of nature, and it seemed its rampage would destroy all of the fantastic lands. Finally, a group of mages
Yeah, how did we
led
stop
by the
this?
sorceress named Talia arrived. They cast a spell that created the great winds to drive the storm away from the lightning-struck Titan, and the beast began to slow as the energy gained from the storm disappeared. It managed to return to its resting place before falling asleep once again, and the lands it raised fell silent. Talia and her group were hailed as heroes, and they turned their efforts to restoring the damage done by the Titan. Afterwards, they would guard the jagged mountains until their deaths, continuing to strengthen the enchantment that kept Vamroth's storm and the lightning-struck Titan apart. However, the two
Yes,
are
please
bound to
do.
meet again. Vamroth's storm returns every 300 years from its banishment in the Howling Sands to reawaken the beast below. The last time the Titan awoke was 187 years ago. I fear the day when we must again prepare for the worst.
Well, since the world is kind of
Monoliths
gone,
to
I
heaven.
think it's fine.
In the flat southeastern plains of Xainu, a group of creatures live in a group that grows by a mere one member at the beginning of each year.
Look at him.
The monoliths to heaven.
Is that just a...
Each monolith is less flesh and more stone.
Oh, it's...
Made
Yeah,
of
it's a
obsidian,
stone.
They are shaped like a rugged
It's
ellipse,
kind of like a
with a
leaf
singular large
with
hole running
legs.
through the
That's what
top
I was thinking
portion,
of.
like a downward
I
staring
was thinking
eye.
of a
Two
feather
spindly
with
legs
legs.
jut out and then fall to the ground from the center of the monolith. Legs that look like they would never
Yeah,
be
they-
able to support
they
a
don't do leg
creature
day.
of a monolith's mass.
No.
However, the monolith's deep magical ties with the stars allow them to stand for the long walk they
You
must
think that they
undertake
have a leg
every
shake
new
because they
year.
don't have any hands?
Monoliths travel between two locations and two locations only.
I don't
One
know.
is the site of a
I
meteor,
don't think we'll ever
a
know.
crater that spans 1,000 feet wide. The other is a tomb for Jiang the magician, the monolith's creator. Known for his near-eccentric obsession with the stars, Jiang frequently ventured to the Xainu plains with stargazing gear, constantly looking for what he claimed to be the heavenly planet. Such a planet is vaguely described in old Xainu texts, but only as folktale, a legend. However, Until his dying breath, Jiang believed the heavenly planet to be more than just a myth, and so created the Monoliths to carry out his work when he himself could no longer achieve his dream. Until the week before the new year, the Monoliths remained buried in a ring around Jiang's tomb. During this time, the holes in their bodies create various patterns as the sun rises and sets. Once eve falls on the week before the new year, the Monoliths rise from their slumber one by one, and it is during this time that one can see Jiang's determination to ascend to the heavenly planet. The tallest current monolith towers a staggering 600 feet in the air. Each following monolith is 50 feet shorter for a total of a dozen. As the sky darkens, the monoliths begin a slow 50-mile walk to the crater site, with only starlight to guide them. As they walk in descending order, they almost look like the stairs of a giant's castle.
Damn, that would look so cool to see that.
When they have gathered in the center of the crater, the birth of a new monolith begins. Still in their descending order, the light of the new sun shines through the holes of the monoliths to the ground, illuminating the spot where a new member will rise from the ground, born from the fragments of the meteor that struck the fantastic lands 2,000 years ago. This new member will become the new tallest monolith, the next stepping stone to Jiang's fabled
and then they'll
world.
become a
Once
staircase all the way to the planet.
Place at the front of the line, the stone giants begin their walk back to the grave of their master, where they bury themselves once again until the next year.
That's gonna take a while, but man, that's so cool.
Travels,
And oh my goodness, what is that?
The Notepeople that live in the eastern plains of Darius stand out
This
as
is
the
what
most
happens
unique
when you like
and
music too
wondrous
much.
creatures. Living music.
This is what Beethoven became after
Created
he died.
200 years ago, when a sorceress called Eliana sought to create enchanted musical instruments capable of producing the most beautiful sounds ever heard. Instead,
I'll accidentally create
she
a new type
created
of
the
people.
Notepeople. As the spell intended to make a symphony progressed, the ink and notes inscribed on the enchantment papers quite literally flew off the parchment and began to coalesce in a swirl of sound and symbols. They took on the shape of their creator, creating the first Note Woman. Eliana would grow old, but the Note Woman continued to stay with her, forever playing music when her creator desired it. Eliana would create dozens more of its kind before she died at an age of 152 years. The Notepeople themselves
152 years.
would carry her body away into the plains they now inhabit. The sound that the harp reeds and grasses make while blowing in the wind greatly appeals to their kind. The Notepeople today are just as, if not more, talented in magic and music. They delight in having visitors to entertain, oftentimes taking whoever comes across them by hand and bringing them to its friends. It is rather odd to be touched by a Noteman. The notes and lines that make up their bodies are nearly flat, working together to make a three-dimensional form. Yet they feel cool, almost like thin, delicate paper. They can shift their bodies into whatever form they please. I've even seen Notepeople exchange and mix their music to produce sounds that they could not accomplish on their own.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Notepeople have a special affinity for starlight moths that provide
He saw
lights
something
to
in
the
his
plains in the night.
SW.
Being inky black themselves, Notepeople will often try to capture the starlight moths within their bodies to make them visible for nightly performances. It was during such a performance that I was able to witness the Notepeople for the first time on a warm summer evening, with the harp reeds and grass humming softly along with the music of the Notepeople. It will be an experience I will never forget.
Truly.
I bet you
Ocean
won't.
sippers.
That sounds really cool.
It was while visiting to the fishing ports of the south that I learned of the wondrous ocean sippers. The suntanned fishermen I spoke to had encountered them almost daily on their voyages, and had collected several objects of study. Among these were several sketches, pellets, and even an injured specimen that they had taken on board. At first glance, a sipper looks to be some kind of large iridescent bird, similar in appearance to a pigeon. On closer inspection, however, it becomes apparent that in place of feathers, the creature is covered in a material with a blend of traits of feathers and scales. Like scales, pieces of the material have the texture of the scales of a fish and are firmly connected to the body. However, the shape of the pieces are more similar to the feathers one would see in any other seabird, and even resemble down in some places. Sippers are capable of breathing in both air and fresh water, and spend most of their time as part of a flock in a large bubble of water which drifts high above the iridescent sea. This bubble follows the course of schools of small fish or prawns. At night, the sippers dive from their bubble to the surface of the ocean, where they skim off and swallow a layer of prey in seawater before returning to their abode. The combination of seawater and food is then processed in their guts until they regurgitate it as fresh water and a small pellet composed of salt and the remains of their prey. The water is added to their bubble to compensate for evaporation.
It's a birdfish water filter.
Down toward the ocean below, fishermen will often collect the pellets either for their supply of iridescent salt or in order to sell them to tourists at the ports.
I think this is the only bird poop that you would buy.
Among some of the most curious forms of life in the fantastic lands are the Polydanes. Polydanes can be found all throughout the world, though they are especially concentrated in western cities and in places populated by large groups of other races. In their true forms, Polydanes are roughly the same size and shape as a human, but they have a second set of arms and a blank, smoothed-over face. Their bodies appeared to be composed of various colors of clay.
It's the shy guy, but we have the shy part.
Polydanes are able to stretch and mold and reshape their bodies at will, and can take on the properties of other materials, such as stone or flesh. On occasion, Polydanes will take the form of an inanimate object, though more often they emulate another race before mingling with other members of that race. At other times, Polydanes will take whimsical or nonsensical forms for their own or others' amusement.
Isn't that kind of creepy? Like, are you a Polydane or not?
Of reproduction in two ways.
That Uncle Ben is acting kind of weird, kids.
Polydane or otherwise.
Oh my god, what? See,
through a single Polydane
you don't know if you married a Polydane or not.
Into two distinct individuals. In addition, Polydanes' bodies do not age naturally, and damage from physical attacks against them is not lasting. In most cases, a species which can multiply without aging or being killed would overtake and crowd their environment, but such is not the case for Polydanes. Though their bodies are long-lived and impervious, their spirits will still age, and often pass on after 100 years or so. Once their spirit is gone, the Polydane's body will revert to its natural clay form and will begin to dry, dying completely once it's fully dry. If a sapient individual encounters the body before it's fully dry, they can will their consciousness into the empty husk, leaving their older form behind and beginning their life anew as a Polydane.
What? You can just become worse.
There is still much debate over the nature of Quirbblers. Some profess that they are collections of very communal spirits. Others claim that they are merely a novel of variation of atomite. Quirbblers are often found in the various woods of the northern cliffs. From a distance, they appear as shimmering patterns along the surface of trees. However, should a traveler pass by them, the Quirbler will remove themselves from the tree and appear in front of the traveler as a swirling pillar of light. The Quirbler will refuse to move out of the way until the traveler has beaten them in some challenge, usually in the form of a riddle or a game of chance.
Dude, I just want to go home.
Should the traveler win this challenge, the Quirbler will allow them to travel on. Should the traveler fail, however, the Quirbler will enter through the traveler's mouth and take command of the traveler.
Oh no.
The Quirbler-possessed individual will then make their way back to a village, town, or city, where they will take part in feasts, festivals, and other merriments. Individuals who are possessed by Quirbblers can be identified by both their eccentric and celebratory behavior, and by the swirls of light that can be seen in their eyes. Quirbblers may leave of their own accord after celebrating for a few days, but they can also be coaxed out by placing meats, cheeses, tarts, and spiced wine just out of reach of a possessed individual. Individuals
these kind
who
of give
have
off
been
like
possessed
the
by a
mischievous
Quirbler
children
are
kind of
often
vibe.
no worse for the wear,
Yes.
aside from exhaustion and embarrassing stories accumulated from their excessive partying.
They're like the little
Nearly
extra
40
shot
years
that you
ago,
take
One
before
possessed
going home.
individual led a large group of Quirbblers
A
to
blackout.
the northern village of Oaken. It took a full 2 weeks for the dragons to get word of the news and sort out the affected citizenry. However glad the citizens were to have their wits back about them, they did miss the merriment that the Quirbblers had brought them. This, paired with the fact that the Quirbblers meant no ill will and had only been searching for a place to escape the cold of the woods, led to the creation of a yearly holiday in Oaken and the surrounding villages, wherein the villages are open for a full week to the Quirbblers, so that they and the villagers may celebrate to their heart's content.
So wholesome.
Ruyablorts.
They don't do
Partially
anything
named for
bad,
the
I
distinct
guess.
deep bubbling they periodically
No,
make
they just
to
party.
sustain their levels of buoyancy. Ruyablorts
If you
are
want to become an
immense
extrovert, you
jellyfish-like
need to find one of the
creatures used
Quirbblers.
by merfolk
Yes,
throughout
you
the
need to become
fantastic
friends with
lands in
Quirbler.
constructing their undersea homes. Anywhere from 1 to 500 feet in diameter at the bell, Ruyablorts may look like jellyfish, apart from the large, simple, almost horse-like head that matches the same transparency and jelly-like state as the rest of the body. But, unlike jellyfish, their tentacles do not contain any poisons and are actually more or less vestigial growths. Ruyablorts are primarily filter feeders and are to some extent photosynthetic. The bell is an enormous air sac that keeps the Ruyablorts suspended in the water. Air is taken in and released through a circle of small tubes near the base of the bell. At night, they glow through a soft cycle of translucent turquoise, pink, and green.
That's
Merfolk
cool.
are well known
I
for
think
their
there's,
pieces when it comes to
one
decorations.
Giant
Always
aquatic
wanting to
animal
find
that's
a
like
balance
this.
between structure
One of the
and
Leviathans
aesthetics.
in Subnautica is also
To
kind of like
complement
this.
the calming iridescence of the Ruyablort's back, the merfolk take
would be
such
so
items
pretty.
as discarded abalone shells,
I wish the
glass
jellyfish
corals,
wouldn't
and
kind
pearl
like
sponges as
this
building
little
materials,
jellyfish.
constructing beautifully elegant towers. As they continue to build and live on the Ruyablorts' backs, the Ruyablorts get to eat any scraps that float off the mer cities. Depending on the clan and location, Ruyablort cities can have anywhere from 10 to over 40 of the gentle giants floating together. With the right spells, land dwellers can journey with the merfolk under the sea and enter an almost otherworldly realm of soft rainbow light, as fish, whales, and merfolk alike swim around and within the Ruyablort metropolis.
I like how they use the word
Sun
otherworldly
steamers.
realm when this is already
Years after
in
the
a
close
different
brush with the
world.
Bumpkles, I would make 3 more ventures into the Blackrock Forest.
Well, to them it's not
However,
a different
On
world.
the
Okay,
4th
to us it
journey,
is,
I
but
was
the
in search
people
of
there
one
it's
creature
not.
in
Okay.
particular, the fabled beings known as Sunstealers, said to be
Yes.
tall as the trees themselves
Yes.
and black and cold as a starless
I
night.
like Sunstealers.
Heavens know why I would actually want to
What?
intentionally go looking for them. The dragons once again sent help with me, this time with a young sapphire dragonling named Tyria and a wise steelback named Jarnati. Before leaving, Garin ran up to us with a last-minute gift as well, a potion that would turn us dark as the Blackrock Forest, so that the creatures hiding within could not spy us as we invaded their home. Garin himself would not dare accompany us again. I do not think any less of him for doing so. The trip to the Blackrock Forest felt different this time. Colder. Like the creatures expected our return, and were gleefully waiting to strike as soon as we stepped foot into their lair. I suspected it was just nerves, though as we passed through the rugged lane, I could not help but begin to have second thoughts about coming back. As the first Blackrock shrubs came into view, and the new moon cast darkness onto the ground, Tyria, Jarnati, and I took out Garin's gift, and each took a drink from the bottle. It was like having a barrel of water from the glaciers of the ridge forced down your throat, but when the chills passed, we could tell Garen's work had been done. We were all still able to see each other, but each of us looked like a reflection in slowly rippling water. A camouflage to shield us from whatever lurked in the trees. We steadied our minds and once again went into the Ashen Trail. Sunstealers were said to live deep within the black rock trees, where the air itself feels like floating pitch, and the slightest sound echoes like the crackling of 1,000 bones. We journeyed for what I think was 2 days. All the while, the Ashen Trail grew less and less pronounced, and the darkness became
they look
overwhelming.
beautiful.
More than once, Jarnati suggested we concede and turn back, but I was stubborn, and Tyria
kinda
was
look like
eager for
the-
adventure.
I don't remember his name
Pushed on.
from Spirited Away.
On the 5th day,
The guy with the
Jarnati
mask.
spotted something.
Yeah.
A patch of darkness,
I don't remember
even
his
more
name,
ominous
either
than the
mask
surrounding
face or
black.
something like
A
that.
darkness that rippled and seemed to ripple and churn. I knew at once we had found a Sunstealer grove. It was well off the Ashen Trail, though we knew that we must step off the path. Tyria was the first to go forward. I am slightly ashamed to say I was the third. The chill grew frigid as we came closer. The silence all
Why
consuming.
are we looking for them
But
again?
we still pressed on. After moving a mere 20 paces,
just
we
wants
were
to know
soaked
about
with
them.
sweat, near collapse. But we made it, and we waited to gaze upon a Sunstealer with a mix of terror and excitement. None came. We waited for hours, and the creatures never appeared. It was maddening. Time slipped away. On the 3rd day, Jarnati finally told us to go back, and with hearts heavy, provisions low, and minds fogging, we relented. And as we neared the clearing back into the rugged paths, the Sunstealers appeared. The old scriptures were true. Tall as the trees, like a shroud woven from a black sky, a smooth white depression for a face, 2 black expressionless eyes that looked on us like a child about to curiously crush an insect.
Oh
An
no.
ebony crown that floated above their heads with long, slender points. And above the crown, an orb that looked like a star. An orb that made me realize why the Sunstealers were so aptly named. The crown seemed to suck light from the circle, the glow changing from white to gray to black as it reached the crown's base. But it didn't end with the stars within their crowns. What little light that snuck through the trees was dragged to them as well, the black leaves withering as they lost what little sun they could live from, the creatures living within them fleeing or falling dead at the creature's feet. Tyria
Beautiful.
died. The Sunstealers
No!
enveloped her in their cloaks, and when they moved away, she was nothing more than a weathered skin. They parted, as if telling Jarnati and I to leave, as if we had paid the price for their mercy with 1 life. We stumbled away, and when I looked back, they were gone. The Ashen Trail was overrun with new blackrock plants, as if it had never existed. That was my 4th and final visit to the forest. Without the Ashen Trail, the dragons themselves have refused to go back.
Well, yeah, for good reason.
Trimbleweiss.
Oh my
Trimbleweiss are
God.
among the most numerous creatures in all of fantasy, and with good reason. They are able to thrive in nearly any
Why
environment
are they so
where there is food.
chonkers?
Outwardly, Trimbleweiss begin their
Beautiful.
life with an appearance similar to that of a mouse, though without a noticeable tail and much more rotund. They have white coats of fur and ruby eyes. As a Trimbleweiss carries on through its life, its development is shaped by the food it eats. The type of food that the Trimbleweiss eats will cause changes in its size, shape, coat, and even
So what, did this
occasionally
one eat
the
a
limbs it
pear or something?
possesses. Just as the type of food that the Trimbleweiss eats affects its outward appearance, the quality of the food it eats changes its disposition. High-quality food causes the Trimbleweiss to become tame and domestic, while garbage causes it to become vicious and dangerous. For this reason, families will often forego eating the choice portions of their meal in order to appease and train the Trimbleweiss which may be living in their house. While paying a visit to the court of
We have to
Florent,
give them the
I was
best
treated by my
scraps?
host to a pair of curiosities. The Count was in possession of 2 very unique specimens of Trimbleweiss, one of which had only ever been fed on gold, and a second which had only ever been fed on rose petals. The first had grown in size an appreciable amount, and had a sleek coat of golden coloration, and was much thinner on the front than in the back, giving it a kind of egg shape. The second did not seem to have grown much. If anything, it had shrunk. However, its coat had been replaced by brilliant layers of red feathers, and it had a thick tail, similar to a dragon's. Later that night, the Count and I feasted on what I was informed was a Trimbleweiss which had been raised on a diet of beef, pork, and veal. I found the meal quite to my liking. Uunsen.
I see.
The Uunsen is one of the most elusive creatures in all of fantasy.
So we don't even get to see them, this is just like their paw print?
As in spite of all the evidence of its existence, no man, dragon, elf, or dwarf has made clear observation of it. There is even still doubt as to whether the Uunsen is a single beast or an entire species.
I can't believe there's a Bigfoot in fantasy.
Add to its intrigue, which is why I have included it in this collection. The Uunsen moves at an extremely rapid pace, which is the main reason it has been able to evade observation or capture for all these years. It seems to know instinctively where its hunters are
Sonic
looking,
Bigfoot.
constantly moving out of sight or hiding behind secluded cover. It never seems to leave behind any hair or scent, only its footprints. The trail of prints that the Uunsen leaves are highly unusual, and are the only aspect of the creature's existence which can be readily observed. The prints are composed of a single large circle about the size of a deer's hoof, with two smaller circles on the sides of it, and two other circles behind it. Once made, a large jet of steam will rise out of each print, mixing in with the morning mists that are present when the Uunsen is most active.
That's what I was thinking.
Interestingly,
it's like
the arrangements of the prints may change over time.
Chunks of rock just assembled together.
That the Uunsen has anywhere
But no,
between
that's
1
that footprint.
and 12 legs.
Maybe they just wear. Maybe this is just the design of their shoe. Yes!
The Vinthrill are a group of creatures that inhabit the Jagged Valley, about 3/4 of the way along the trail
I can be
to
loud,
the
so
Blackrock Forest.
I'm just cheering for it
Also known as
in a normal sounding voice.
The Vinthrill does indeed resemble the towering Monopedes in the Blackrock Forest with its round hairy head and mouthful of needle-like teeth, but they are in fact entirely different species. Vinthrill do not possess feet, instead using their large clawed bat-like wings for both flying and climbing through the cliffs of the Jagged Valley. As it glides, a long tail lined evenly with 3 to 6 balls of fur, similar to its head, trails behind, producing a soft whistling sound as the wind passes through the hairs. Though Vinthrill are not above devouring travelers or other animals unfortunate enough to cross them, they are actually predominantly fruit eaters. Specifically, they eat the fruit of the maroon trees that are strong enough to grow on the sides of the cliff faces. The fruit of these trees looks exactly like the head of the Vinthrill, round and covered in fibers, and so residents of the Fantastic Lands have taken to calling it Vinthrill fruit. While not particularly tasty to most in the Fantastic Lands, to the Vinthrill, these fruits play an invaluable role in their reproduction. A female Vinthrill will swoop and snatch a number of fruits off a tree while pregnant, and puncture a single hole in the fruit's hard outer shell. From there, it regurgitates an infant Vinthrill no bigger than the tip of a finger into the soft innards of the fruit before flying off. The fruit both serves as protection and the food for the juvenile Vinthrill until it is strong enough to break free. Up until recently, people thought the similar look between the Vinthrill and the Vinthrill fruits were just a coincidence, though now it seems the fruits play a larger role in developing Vinthrills than previously thought. While exploring the Jagged Valley, the adventurer Galbion was attacked by a pregnant Vinthrill and only escaped by throwing his pack of Guya melons behind him, which the Vinthrill immediately took and deposited eggs inside of before flying off. Galbion, intrigued as to why the Vinthrill birthed its young in a non-native fruit, stuck close to the Guya melons until the Vinthrill hatched.
Oh, did it change to look like the Vinthrill fruit?
When he brought the Vinthrill back's shock, the creature sported the same bright pink and green coloration as the Guya melons.
Oh no!
Along with tough spikes lining their bodies instead of the usual
they look like
hairs.
it because they look like
After
the
this
fruit that they were born.
discovery,
Okay,
a brief
that makes
boom
sense.
in
They're kind of like
experimental
the
Vinthrill
mice.
breeding occurred, with successful
You know?
births in fruits
Yeah.
such
they,
as the
they
coconut,
change their
pumpkin,
form to what they
and
eat.
Dara cones. However, people soon realized that these Vinthrill suffered from terrible sicknesses as they matured, and died painfully shortly after. Nowadays, to
Vinthrills.
prevent the exploitation of exotic hybrids, as well as fear of damaging the natural breeding process, experimental breeding of Vinthrills is illegal, and there are several penalties inflicted on anyone who tries to entice a Vinthrill to birth young in anything other than the Vinthrill fruit. Watchers of the Waning Moon. Once in a while, I will come across a creature
that a
that I feel
mermaid
I
deer?
will never truly be able to understand. The
It's a
Watchers of
ghost
the Waning
deer.
Moon are such a group, shrouded in mystery, and practitioners in a strange and surreal act that even the dragons cannot explain. Watchers live in the brush of the eastern plains, only appearing at night. They have the head and front body of a white stag, with thin, fine antlers adorned with moon lily buds. Some say the antlers are not horns at all, but actual moon lily plants that have sprouted and rooted into their heads. However, due to the Watcher's curious nature, no one has been able to prove one theory or another. The back end of the animal is the tail of a serpent, long, smooth-scaled, and pearly. The tip of the tail
deer
ends in a
snake.
single large moon lily, which, like the flowers on the Watcher's antlers, will remain a bud until the moment of the Watcher's death. These creatures are intensely shy, fleeing and vanishing in a cloud of mist should someone spot them. The only time they
It's
show
like me.
themselves is during the
When
time of the
anybody
waning
approaches me.
present of the first moon, during
I'm a
which
snake
dozens
deer
of watchers
confirmed.
will gather at the plains thicket and undertake a ritual unlike any other. When the waning crescent of the first moon is highest in the sky, one watcher from those present will step forward and begin to climb and snake their way up the trees until it rests on top of the leaves. Those below begin to rock and circle in rhythm, their movement along the ground creating strange and perplexing patterns. All the while,
creating crop
they hum
circles.
a low, bass-like chorus. As
Aliens.
the patterns increase in number, the moon lilies on the tail and antlers of the watchers atop the trees will begin to open. Once the lilies are fully bloomed, the watcher will let out a long drawn-out cry before pushing off and jumping high into the air. The lilies will begin to release wisps of pollen, and the watcher will inexplicably continue to rise like a flying snake for hundreds of feet, continuing to ascend towards the moon. However, as soon as the lily's pollen is spent, the watcher will cease to rise and plummet to the ground. Upon impact, the broken body of the animal will dissolve into a mist, which rises and dissipates into the night sky. All other
What?
watchers will appear to sigh and fade, clouding the thicket with the same mist until they all disappear.
They
Afterwards,
die in such
the
a
only
dramatic
evidence of
way.
them ever being present
Such
are the
drama
strange
queens.
patterns they drew upon the ground. When I asked the librarian dragons,
are they, like,
Orion
trying to
and
reach the
Luthana,
moon?
about the Watcher's strange
Yes.
practice, they told me they could only
Because
guess.
they're moon watchers.
There are several scripts that provide a theory to the Watcher's behavior. Some say that the Watchers believe the waning crescent is one of their own, an individual that has attained transcendence in the heavens, and that the creatures on this earth are attempting to join it. Indeed, the moon
okay.
crescent resembles an arching snake. Other scripts believe the opposite, that the creatures see the moon as a watcher trapped in the sky, and that in jumping, they are attempting to grab it and bring it back down. Either way, it is a fascinating but thoroughly enigmatic insight into the Watcher of the Waning Moon. Whatever the reason, they show no signs of stopping their ceremony. I wonder if they will ever realize that the moon cannot be caught.
Unfortunately, no.
Xargaarths.
I don't think they will.
The Vulan dwarfs that live within the steam caverns just miles from the ridge are known for their unmatched talent in metalworking and gem cutting. Indeed, the geothermal caves which they have made their home in are abundant with rare metals and gemstones.
Are you okay,
and accounts
Kiwi?
for nearly 40% of
Just
all
fine. Every
jewelry
time we see
traded
them, we
through
find
the
them so
fantastic
hilariously
lands.
looking.
Any piece made by the Vulan is a fine treasure to possess. During their mining in the steam caverns, the Volgun began to notice that carts of gems would return to the surface with fewer stones than originally loaded. Though at first confused, they quickly found a creature mixed in with their gems that was indistinguishable from the stones except when it was feeding. The Xargaarths. Xargaarths start their lives looking similar to stones, such as geodes or agates, with their outer skin covered in a sturdy shell that looks exactly like rock. Within this shell is a mismatch of tissue and organs. Xargaarths can spout small red tentacles for locomotion. As they move, a row of microscopic teeth scrape minerals and gather organic matter from the steam cavern's floors and walls. As they grow older, Xargaarths begin to abandon feeding on organic matter and turn solely to stones for food. Much to the Volgun's dismay, gemstones were the Xargaarths' favored treat. After ingesting the crystals, Xargaarths incorporate them into their outer shell, where they grow along with the rest of the creature as if they were part of the body itself.
Little cockroaches.
The older a Xargaarth grows, the deeper it tunnels into the earth to find more bountiful feasts of jewels. Eventually, they resemble giant slug-like creatures covered in countless crystal growths. Dozens of small stubby legs carry the Xargaarth's body as it skitters along the ground. Although at first considered a destructive pest to the gem trade, the Volgun have since been domesticating Xargaarths as both a pet and a business helper. As it turns out, Xargaarths shed crystals that grow too large. These discarded gems are collected and sold as they are, or further cut into an array of jewelry. Different Xargaarths have different preferences for what jewels they ingest, so the Volgun are sure to keep scouting for further varieties of Xargaarth subspecies. During my last visit, I saw magnificent specimens of ruby, opal, and even diamond Xargaarths in Volgun care. The good dwarf Lair gave me a beautiful fire opal that had fallen off one of the creatures, which I now carry in my travel bag wherever I go.
So it's like an investment. I see.
Yes, it
The
is.
Yanyaar and the Yanyiirus.
Oh, no, that's an SCP.
There is a forested ring of islands east of the Fantastic Lands that has been left largely uncharted due to a species even the dragons shudder to hear mentioned.
The dragons are afraid of this thing?
The Yanyaar spread cold and lifelessness wherever they walk, blanching everything
pretty
around
scary
them
looking.
as they continuously sap vitality. Anything living or inanimate that comes too close to the Yanyaar will collapse, grayed and cold, in a matter of seconds. Such behavior has caused the trees, the earth, and even the surrounding sea of their home to turn gray as dust, and so the Yanyaar's home is aptly known as the Monochrome Islands. Physically,
you don't even need to use the
Yanyaar
filter.
are tall and lean, like the elves, though they do not wear garments, and lack any parts to identify gender, if they so have them. Their skin is the same gray as everything they touch, and their hands and feet both have long, nailless digits that constantly grip and ungrip with a chilling fluidity. However,
Beautiful.
the most distinctive and chilling part of the
They look
Yanyaar
like aliens.
are their faces. A bulbous,
Yeah.
smooth head, far too large for a body of their thinness, with squinted gray eyes that appear disturbingly human. While normally featureless apart from the eyes, the Yanyaar's head will split vertically into thirds to reveal two separate jaws with even, needle-like teeth. During this time, no one can see that the Yanyaar's eyes are more akin to a tongue, a sensory organ attached to a fleshy stalk that runs all the way down its throat. It is believed that the Yanyaar are blind and rely on these eyes to smell their surroundings, like a serpent tasting the air.
Why you gotta put it near the
The
eyes,
first
bro?
Yanyaar ever seen washed ashore on the beaches of the
I mean,
Fantastic
with such a
Lands
mouth, they
60
can have a
years
mouth
ago,
inside
and
of
it was
the.
from
They
this
can have a
corpse's
tongue inside
autopsy
of that mouth.
that
It's
most of
gotta
the
go
information
somewhere.
about this species was
Yeah.
obtained. It was easy to see where it had come from.
They're
Even in
like
death.
snails, kind
The
of.
Yanyaar's corpse left a trail
They
of
can't
gray
see,
in the
they
ocean
feel.
waves, though said trail was lost after the dragons pursued it for dozens of miles offshore.
What?
It would take
Even
another
its
20
corpse
years
just
to find
sucked up all the
Monochrome
color
Islands,
everywhere.
Yet only 6 months for the Dragon Council to declare the area off limits.
Doesn't like colors,
to
okay?
all.
This world is too
Most of the Fantastic
colorful.
Land's inhabitants simply believed the Yanyaar were too dangerous to go near, and left it at that. I However, know the deeper meaning behind the monochrome island being sealed from the world. In a different time, I would have probably been imprisoned, maybe even banished from the fantastic lands. However, now that my home is all but abandoned, I leave this information to whomever may stumble upon it. The Yanyaar corpse we recovered was mutilated, with huge circular punctures throughout the body. Strangely, the wound had no exposed flesh. Instead, a black empty void filled the gap. When the poor dragon Dr. Herodis tried to examine the wounds, the void turned his flesh to pure black. He looked like a living shadow in his final moments. Then, with a cry, Herodis faded out of existence. When the dragons finally discovered the monochrome islands, they found their explanation to the darkness seen on the first Yanyaar's body. Beneath the dark waters of the Yanyaar's home lays the Yanyiirus, an even more terrifying creature than the beings above. From what the dragons observed, the Yanyiirus appeared to be worshipped as a god by the Yanyaar. The Yanyaar will cast themselves off sheer cliffs of the island to the sea below, where shadowy tentacles rise in the thousands to spear the bodies and drag them below. It is unknown how large the Yanyiirus is, though its limbs alone are long enough to effortlessly scale the 2,000-foot cliffs of the Yanyaar's home, and then some. The touch of the Yanyiirus appears to have the same graying effect as the Yanyaar's touch, but on a much more powerful scale, capable of turning things to blackness, and then nothing. As seen with Herodis, the touch of the Yanyiirus persists long after initial contact. This similarity has driven me to make a hypothesis about the being's relationship. Perhaps the Yanyiirus gave the Yanyaar some of its power years and years ago in return for their servitude. The dozens of islands surrounding the Yanyaar's home show signs of ancient ruins. Could the Yanyaar have conquered these neighboring lands and brought them to their master? It seems like a plausible explanation, though since there has been no life other than the Yanyaar, the Yanyiirus has since resorted to devouring its servants. The once much beneficial relationship has become grimly one-sided. Ziira'lasp.
Cost of power, I suppose.
In a fitting but bitter sense, the Ziira'lasps will be the last entry in this storybook, as they were the last creatures of the fantastic lands at the end of the war, and the first to die out in the new beginning. Although their bodies resembled that of a swan, their skin was more attuned to that of the pearl-crested dolphins that once swam the iridescent seas to the south. Their eyes were the deepest of blue, their wings forever softly shining like fluid ivory, their mouths a smooth, toothless bill that curved ever so slightly upward. They were capable of taking a human form as well, resembling angels and awing all those they passed. As beautiful as they were intelligent, the Ziira'lasp were a vain and conceited race of creatures who forever squabbled with the dragons over whose wisdom and looks were superior, and so were disliked by a great number of the fantastic land's inhabitants, for whom the dragons were born leaders and advisors. As a result, the Ziira'lasp secluded themselves from all other beings for nearly a millennia, constructing a citadel of their own.
They just became hikikomori
from those they deemed inferior.
Nobody likes me, so I'll just go away.
In times of calamity, and rejected all offerings of friendship. It was not until the third awakening of the lightning-struck Titan that the Ziira'lasp were seen again. Vamaroff's storm returned with terrifying ferocity, and the Titan rose with its strength multiplied tenfold. Half of the Magician's Council perished in the ensuing fight with the beast, along with nearly 100 dragons, 1,000 birds, and 1,000 more spirits, and still the Ziira'lasp refused to act. And so, the Maker himself came to the Ziira'lasp. His face dark with fury, his eyes normally full of compassion, brimming with icy rage. He spurned their race, accused them of being petty cowards who watched as their world burned around them. For their vanity, he cursed their citadel, enchanted it so that no Ziira'lasp could ever set foot in it again, then covered it in the ashes of those killed by the Titan as a
Whoa.
reminder of the suffering the Ziira'lasp could have helped prevent. Overcome with despair of what they had lost and what they could have had,
I mean,
the Ziira'lasp vowed to never turn their backs on the rest of the fantastic lands again, and charged into the center of the Titan's path. Side by side with the dragons they once despised and the master they adored, the Ziira'lasp beat back the beast to its mountain once again. The Titan fell back into its slumber, but the grief and devastation brought about lingered for decades to come. The Ziira'lasp worked with renewed fervor in rebuilding to make up for all the time they had shut themselves away. They became the chief architects of the fantastic lands and filled this world
I guess
with
it
their
turned
incredible
out
and intricate handcraft.
for the better.
This lasted for another 1,000 years, and life
I was like, oh,
Sadly.
whoa. What was
And
that?
less than 3
Kind of
decades
harsh?
ago,
Well, I mean, not
Yeah.
really.
War
Thousands of
began,
people
and
died
all
because
the
they didn't decide
Ziira'lasp
to act,
had
so...
or ever would create was destroyed in the calamity that followed.
Oh, no.
Once again, the Maker came, but this time his eyes held only grief, as he was forced to smite those who had fanned the flames of destruction. The Ziira'lasp desperately tried to bring back peace, but to no avail, and so they fell into despair. When the last buildings finally crumbled, the Ziira'lasp had turned black from the ash and smoke. Their blue eyes turned bloody red from grief. As the surviving others filed out of the fantastic lands, the Ziira'lasp stayed behind, silent as the stones of their cities, and within these ruins they remain, turned to stone as the sun sets for the final time and the world turned cold.
Damn. That was so good.
I teared up.
So, there you have it, folks. The last memories
Wait,
that
this is my
we have
favorite
of
SCP.
SCP-1762 and the land that they come from. Wait, what?
What the?
What is that? What is this? Is this
Oh.
is this a containment breach? Tell me I'm not the only one seeing this. What does this mean? Does this mean they're back? You all seen the box materialize, right? That wasn't there whenever we came in here. It wasn't here whenever I was eating
Yes,
my
it
lunch.
wasn't.
I know that. I swear, if this is Takanaka playing a joke, he is dead. But if he's not playing a joke, that means I'm dead. Wait a minute. They just dropped a note. Let me get
Uh-oh.
that. Oh man. This note. It says, "You didn't forget us."
Oh,
Because whenever I read the book,
Why
my
you gotta do
imagination
this to us, man?
triggered something. You know, my lectures never really end with a moral lesson, but because of all this, what the dragons have done, and for the first time in a year, I have ended a lecture with more people than I started with. Let's have a moral conclusion, shall we? And that moral conclusion is this: never forget your loved ones. Keep them alive with your memories and your stories and your thoughts. Because if you do that, then they're never truly gone. Thank you for listening. If indeed you still are. And
Yes,
you
we
all
are.
dismissed. Goodbye.
Wow.
Yeah, this is truly my favorite SCP. Every time I
Is there
rewatch it, I'm
anything else?
reminded why I
Yep.
like it so much.
That was so good. I literally just sat here and kind of like watched the what is essentially the Lord of the Rings, pretty much. Like The amount of lore that is behind this SCP is astonishing.
Do you now understand why I wanted you to watch the Volgun one and why people wanted you to watch the Volgun one as well?
Yeah, I think I'm guessing what the Exploring series did was basically read the SCP file for the first bit, which is 1762-1 and -2. But here we go into the Beast of the Old Letters, so...
Yeah, like it just tells the story of how dragons disappeared from our world, or the SCP world, but this basically just explains everything about the world. Volgun does, which is something that I really like, which gave more meaning to the story altogether and warmed my heart.
As an SCP, it went into so much detail regarding its world, but yet it still leaves enough place for us to theorize about, like, oh, how did this world come to be? Why did it exist in this form, right? What exactly is fantasy to begin with, and who created it? Who is the maker? We only got mention of them during the last bit. All of a sudden they just showed up and they're like, no, get out of your room, go and help the others, right?
They were like a mom screaming at a teenager.
But then the maker went into despair and had to smite down the people causing destruction around them. And then the world just died because of that. It's so sad. Maybe, is it because they were forgotten? Because like those fantasy world, no one was left to remember it, which is why their world died essentially? Could that be the reason?
I said, my biggest theory, my personal biggest theory that I'm willing to change is that it's probably a creation that was created by maybe a group of friends, like a younger child that was lonely and just wanted a world where they could live in. And as the child grew older and like the people grew older and ended up dying and not passing on the world to somebody else, the world ended up being forgotten. And so the creator or the person they put in place as the creator of the world turned to despair because nobody else remembered the world that they spent so much time in creating. And that is why he ended up smiting everything. That is how I took the story altogether. I don't know about other theories because I just it's just such a beautiful SCP in its own way without being edgy or anything else. It just explores the little world that he created and I love it so much because of that.
That was truly a journey, and not gonna lie, I teared up a little bit at the end there. I guess I'll have to also attribute that to the Volgun's incredible storytelling skills. That was very great.
Yeah, Volgun is awesome.
And I do agree, though, that it's probably something along those lines, because people only truly die when they're forgotten. So I think that's probably what this world was, that this world died because they were forgotten. And how Volgun showed that once we remember them, they came back. It's back to life.
Which really warms the heart because the story was shared. Now they exist again in your mind, though.
Now everyone remembers fantasy. That's so cool how SCP can do this much. Like, there's no limit to how far they can go with an SCP story. This is just such a great example of that.
That's so
Is
good.
this my favorite SCP?
I mean, it doesn't have to be. It's my favorite. I just love it so much. I don't think that any other SCP, no matter how amazing it might seem, will come onto the same level of emotion that I felt when I discovered dragons were there for the first time.
Yeah.
So that's why it's my favorite. I enjoyed it a lot when I found it for the first time. And I found it through Volgun's video, through this video right here. While I was just listening to SCPs while I was working on something else, which is why I remember some of the monsters and I don't remember the other ones, which is why I have some monsters as favorites and I don't have some as favorites. I love the little dragons were their world, and I was super excited when I heard that you wanted to do it and I saw people vote for it.
I will say that this is probably the only SCP that has really gotten like an emotional reaction from me. I remember SCP-5000. I thought that story was super cool and I really liked it, of how it kind of incorporated a bunch of different SCPs into that timeline. But here it created a literal world, a literal fantasy world that was very well fleshed out and that you could actually learn more about and understand by looking at the creatures. You can picture it so vividly of how the world looked like.
And because like everything was so well described and like imagined, you can imagine how it could have ended as well. Kind of it's open-ended, which makes it even more sad.
Yeah, once again, that's the power of SCP. By leaving things open-ended, you can create the story in your own mind, and whatever story you're imagining is probably far better than anything anyone could ever write about, right? This is great. This was amazing.
Yes, it is.
I'll have to see later whether this will remain my favorite SCP or not, but I'm probably going to say that for now, yeah, this one is probably my favorite. This was really freaking good.
Zero and I agree on something.
It was a really long watch, but honestly, I don't regret watching an entire movie length of an SCP.
It was so worth it.
Yo, if we could make this into a fantasy movie, that would be so cool, but because of the SCP license, probably not.
I wish one could just make like an animation world or a webtoon or an anime or just like a normal movie about just exploring the world of dragons where there or Fantasia. I would so watch that multiple times. Even if it would be really poor quality, I would probably like have it at like 10 out of 10 simply because I love this SCP so much.
Well, I guess, Kiwi, all we can do is fantasize about it.
Yes.
Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you guys in the next one. Later, my dudes.
Bye bye.